Hi, it's Frank Cottrell-Boyce finally live. Sorry about the delay. How are you doing? I'm here to talk about Runaway Robot. I don't know if anyone can hear me. Give me a wave if you can. And there's some more exciting music there because I'm so excited to be here live on at home. I'm going to talk to you about Eric, and I think Eric might be here with me as well. I'll go and have a little look. This is Eric, the Runaway Robot. He's here in person today to help me answer your questions. If you've got any questions, then we're here, and I'm going to keep talking until somebody sends me a question. I've never done a Facebook Live before, so I'm very, very nervous about it. I don't know if it's working or not. I feel as though I'm talking to the mirror. So I'm just going to go through some questions. I've got some questions that I got by email, and here are the questions that I got by email. I got a question from Phoebe. Hello, Phoebe, if you're there. Phoebe, you asked me. Phoebe asked me what my next book is going to be about, and I'll show you my next book. Can you imagine this? I maybe shouldn't be telling you this, but anyway, this is my next book, and it's going to be about 300 pages long. I write in a notebook. This is my notebook because it feels less like work if I'm writing in a notebook. This is how scruffy it is. This is how messy it is. So don't worry when you're doing your work if it's messy. If you're doing creative writing, if it's messy or it's spelt wrong, that's okay. You can tidy it up later. That's my new book. That's my question from Sophie. Hi, Sophie. I hope you heard my answer. Oh, Phoebe, that was. Sorry, Phoebe. My next question was, what was my favourite part of Runaway Robots? I met you at Lady Mount School. Oh, maybe that's from Phoebe. Sorry. The other question was from Lily, aged 8. What my favourite part of Runaway Robot? My favourite part of Runaway Robot was working on it. I really, really enjoyed working on it. I love the bits where Eric is cooking and he makes a mess and he cooks crisps on his hand and he cooks eggs in his hand. I loved all that bit. I thought that was funny because I like a mess. But when I was writing Runaway Robot, I got very interested in robots. And the way I write books is, I mean, everyone does it differently and you do it the way that you want to do it. But I make a little scrapbook. And I do this because this is what we did in year 6. I had a great teacher in year 6 and she used to make us make little scrapbooks about anything we wanted. We could make a scrapbook about anything we wanted. So I did a little scrapbook about robots. And this is my Eric scrapbook. There's a picture of Eric. That's the real Eric, because Eric in my book is based on a real robot. And this is the real robot. He was genuinely called Eric. He was huge and he was built in the 1920s by a man called Captain Roberts. And so I got very interested in robots and I made a little scrapbook all about robots. Here it is. All the different kinds of robots that we have in our life, including somewhere, there's this one, which I thought was fantastic. Can I find it? This is Eric having tea with someone in Vienna. Probably coffee, in fact, rather than tea. This is a picture of my next door neighbour's lawnmower. They had a robot lawnmower that used to kind of wander around the lawn all by itself and put itself to bed at night in a little recharging hut. So that's where I got that idea from. I'm going to just move around to see if you can get any more questions. I don't know where the questions show up. So if you're sending me questions, I might not be getting them. So perhaps someone from one of the bookshops could text me a question if you like. And in the meantime, I will go on with the questions on the sheet that people emailed me. Is Alfie based on anybody I know? Oh, that's a good question. Because Alfie, as you may remember, has a missing hand. And he doesn't have a missing hand. He has an artificial hand. It's a very cool artificial hand. And that was based on a guy called Daniel Melville who had these incredibly cool hands made for him by a company called Open Bionics. I don't have a picture of him, but if you look him up, his name's Daniel Melville, and he had the acest hands. And so he had those hands, and they were kind of prosthetic hands. And that was interesting. And then the other thing that Alfie was based on was I worked a little while with a charity called Railway Kids, which is about children who don't like school and they kind of miss school and they hang around on buses. But I met one boy who was the coolest boy that I'd ever met, because when he ran away from school, instead of hanging around behind the bus shelter or sitting on a bus, he took himself off to the airport. He took himself off to the airport and sat in departures and got all dressed up and had a nice time there. So that's where Alfie came from. Alfie's kind of stylish that way. I've got another question. What made me write the book? I love the little gaps in history, like when something has happened, but then there's a mystery. So Eric, who, if you look at him, the real Eric, was enormous. He was huge, and he was very, very popular. Like I said, people wanted to have coffee with him and go and visit him. And particularly, people wanted to have their photograph taken with him, like kind of selfie time. And then he went missing. In about 1938, he just disappeared. He was very, very, very famous. He was kind of Taylor Swift level famous. And then he just disappeared. So that kind of interested me, like what happens when those little gaps in history come about. I've got a question from Hillary. What do you do when you get stuck in the middle of writing? Oh God, what do you do? It's so horrible. It's so horrible. But you just have to keep turning up. And it's the same with writing as it is with anything. It's like with athletics, if you're an athlete or a footballer or a musician, there are days when you really don't feel like practicing, you can't face it, but they're the days that you've got to turn up. And the magic thing is, sometimes if you do turn up and you sit at your desk and there's nothing happening in your head, that can turn out to be the best day. Because what I do then is I go back to the beginning and start reading everything I've written to see if there's anything I can change. Because rewriting is always fun. Writing is often difficult. Finley said he loves my books. Finley, I love you. You're a man of great taste. Thank you, Finley. Daniel asked me, would I trust a question? What does that mean? I missed that. Hillary, Daniel, would you trust a question? Okay, I don't know what that means. I'm going to go on to, would you trust a question from a robot? That is a brilliant question, because one of the things I found really, really interesting about robots is that they can be so clever and they can do such amazing things, but they don't think quite the way that we do. They think literally. They take things very literally. So if you were to say to a robot, I see that Liverpool battered Man United last night, the robot might think, that is very interesting. I wonder why some people from Liverpool took some people from Manchester to a chip shop and dripped them in batter. Or if you said to a robot, it's time you pulled your socks up, the robot might bend down and pull its socks up. So in the book, there's a bit where Alfie says to Eric, let's catch the bus. And Eric goes out and catches a bus the way you would catch a fish. So I find that really interesting. That was a good question, Daniel. Thank you for your question, Daniel. I've got another question here from Isaac. Did I laugh when I was writing Runaway Robot? That's a lovely question. Can you make yourself laugh? Can you tickle yourself? You know, the interesting thing about writing comedy is that sometimes you kind of know it's funny, but you don't know when people are going to laugh. So sometimes I get a very, very big laughs in the Eric book, but not at the bits that I thought were that funny. So I think you create a kind of atmosphere of funniness, and then sometimes there's one line that just makes people guffaw, but it's never the line that you thought it was. So I'm kind of like, they do make me laugh, but not in the same places that other people laugh. And I think the other thing that happens is that sometimes you're stuck and it's horrible and you're driving along, and then suddenly you get an idea that makes it all make sense, and then you laugh, but it's not a comedy laugh, it's a laugh of joy and relief. So that's the best laugh. Lisa says, what was my favourite part about Cosmic? And that's a question from Irby Primary, which I think I've been to anyway. My favourite part about Cosmic. I really like to read out the bit. Cosmic is a book about a boy who has a huge growing spurt and gets mistaken for a teacher and ends up being an astronaut. So I liked writing all the bits that were set in space because I always wanted to be an astronaut. I really did desperately want to be an astronaut and sort of still do want to be an astronaut. So I liked writing the bits about space because that allowed me to imagine myself in space. And also it was a good excuse to talk to astronauts. And lots of astronauts were very, very kind and generous to me and gave me lots of their time, including Alan Bean, who was the fourth man to walk on the moon. And what an amazing thing it is that I've spoken to someone who walked on the moon. That's one of the best things about being a writer, is that almost anyone will share their knowledge with you because people are so kind and generous. So writing the bits about space was the best part of writing Cosmic, and reading out. I like to read out the school assembly when people think he's the teacher and he's not the teacher, and he has fun. Karen Weston, Frank, do you think you will write a book set around the current situation? Well, that is so interesting, isn't it? Because we are living through amazing, amazing times, and it kind of would be mad to ignore the situation. But will people want to read about it when it's over? I think you've got to find a way of writing about it that's not really writing about it. So the best example I can think of is that during the Second World War, which was huge like this, chocolate was rationed, wasn't it? And it was rationed for long after the Second World War. And if you'd written a book about chocolate being rationed, people would think, I've had that, I don't want to hear about that anymore. But if you wrote a book with a lot of chocolate in it, called, for instance, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, then everyone would want to read that. So this is a time when you can't see your friends and you can't go out and you can't have adventures. So maybe a book about an adventure, which is what this is. Maybe that's what people will want. This is a book set on an island and it's full of adventures and treasure and excitement. So hopefully that's what people want. Luke from Hexham. Hello, Hexham, from the Forum Bookshop. I love it up there. I love Hexham. I walked Hadrian's Wall last summer, and you live in a very beautiful part of the world. What kind of jobs did I do before I started writing? I started writing at a very young age, but I had one job that I remember very well, which is that, this is quite funny, I was the Punch and Judy man. I had a Punch and Judy show that I took to beaches and to parties and to summer fetes and things like that. And I think that was quite a good training for a writer, because for one really good reason, that you want the audience to stay right to the end so that they give you their money. Because that's how you got paid. You had a little collection at the end. And I used to have a dog that went around at the end, a Toby dog. They're called Toby dogs. And this one was called Figaro. And he had a little hat in his mouth and he would go around like this. And people would put money in the hat. So you had to make sure the story was really good right to the end, otherwise there was no money. So I was a Punch and Judy man for a long time. So I spent all my teenage years and my early 20s with my hands up in the air like this, doing funny voices, going, "Hello, Judy! Judy, hello, Judy!" I didn't do it like that. You have a special thing that you swallow called a swazzle. You have to tie it to your tooth and then swallow it. That's why this tooth, that tooth is a bit weird, because I had to tie a piece of string around it and a swazzle and then swallow it into my throat to make the strange Punch and Judy voice. That's a misspent youth. Scarlett from Irby. Hello, Scarlett. Have I met any robots, and would I like to meet robots? See, the thing is, we work with robots all the time, but we don't call them robots because they don't look like people. Next Door had that lawnmower robot. That was great, and they kind of ended up giving that a name. So Eric, as I said, the real Eric went missing, but a really clever guy rebuilt him in the Science Museum. So he was rebuilt. So do I have a picture here? I don't have a picture here. But I met lots of robots when I went to the Science Museum exhibition. So here's one. But the most exciting thing was I met Eric, because Eric has been rebuilt, and it was a really kind of wonderful moment for me. I know it sounds silly, but I kind of love Eric, and to be able to sort of touch him and shake his hand and listen to him talk was kind of amazing. So if you want to see Eric, he is there in the Science Museum. I think he might be in the National Museum of Scotland at the moment, because the exhibition moves around. But there is a real Eric, and he's really there. I've got another question from Sarah and Lois. What's the first thing you think of when you look at a robot? We think of Iron Man by Ted Hughes. That's good. That's very good. The Iron Man thing. That was an amazing, sad book. Is that the first robot? I mean, the first robot I think of now is Eric because he was real and I have met him. But I like to think about all the kind of modern robots that are around Japan. There's lots of fabulous robots in Japan. What are the robots you like? I like the robot in Futurama. And I like robots that don't look like people. So there are robots that will deliver your pizza, and there are robots that drive buses, and they don't really look like people. They might look like an arm or a leg or an oven with feet or something like that. They're the kind of robots that I like to think about, like the lawnmower robot. Nicola, Stacey, and Georgina, how old were you when you wrote your first story, and what was it? My first book was a book called Millions, which came out in 2004 when I was 15 years younger than I am today, so in my 40s. But the first story that I wrote that I can remember, I don't remember anything about the story, but I wrote a story in year 6 that my teacher thought was very good. And until then, all the way through school, I'd not been good at anything. There were kids in my class who were good at football and good at fighting and good at drawing. And I wasn't good at anything. And my teacher read this story out to the class. And that was an amazing moment because I thought, oh, words are something you can be good at. Like some people are good with a football, some people are good with a guitar, some people are good with their fists. And I thought, oh, words, you could be good with words. So that's when I started to notice words. Sadly, I didn't notice the words that I'd written very much because I can't remember anything about that story except it was about Vikings. Isla Rose from Irby again. There's lots of fun going on in Irby. How much do you think the Porsche would have cost in Cosmic? Oh, great question. I don't know how much a Porsche costs, but what I remember is the line that I say when I'm reading that section out when he says, it costs a lot. The price was written on the windscreen and it took up most of the windscreen. So that's a lovely question, Ira Rose. Sarah Jeremiah and Lois want to know, how do you get the swazzle out? Oh God, it was so horrible. You have to cough it up and you have to learn to cough it up without people hearing because Judy has an ordinary voice. Judy would go, hello, Mr. Punch. And then Mr. Punch would have to go, hello, Judy. So you'd have to swallow it and cough it. I can't imagine what damage I've done to my throat in the years. Hello, Frank from Brandall Primary. Hello, Brandall Primary. How are you all doing? Have I missed any questions? What's the first thing I think? How old are you in first rate story? Irby Primary. Luke from Hexham. I don't think I've missed any questions. Shall I just keep talking? I'll just keep talking. Did I show you my scrapbook? I showed you my scrapbook. What else can I show you? This is my. If you get a book from an independent bookshop, very important to buy your books from independent bookshops because Amazon is run by robots. And it's going to be taken over by robots, and those are bad robots that push people around. So if you get your book from an independent bookshop, I will send you a book plate if you let me know these are the book plates. That's my signature. It's a robot signature, and underneath is Stephen Lenton, the amazing artist's signature, written underneath. And Stephen does draw-along lessons on Instagram. So if you're stuck for something to do or you want to be a great artist, you could follow Stephen Lenton, Draw Along a Lenton. Have I got more questions? Samantha Shipman. What age did I start to write? It kind of depends what you mean by starting to write. So starting to write books, I was a grown-up, but I started to notice words that day in year 6. So I think you start early to notice words, but there's no hurry to get a book written. Some of the greatest writers in the world didn't publish books till they were very old, and some of them did it when they were very young as well. So just there's no hurry and there's no pressure. Finley asks, how do you tell a good robot from a bad robot? Wow, what a brilliant question. I think that's a question to consider with your whole life, really. Gosh, how do you tell a good robot from a bad robot? By their actions. I don't like the robots in Amazon, because in Amazon, if you work in an Amazon warehouse, you have to wear this headset called the Jennifer headset, and that tells you what to do all day. I think that's a bad robot, because that's a robot that's pushing a human around. Maybe that's the answer. A good robot is something that does something for you, something nice for humans, like bring them pizza or do the washing up or something like that. And a bad robot is something that makes humans do things for the robots. So I don't like the Jennifer robot in Amazon. Molly from Wooler would like to know how she can get her book published. She's 7. Just write it, Molly. Get it written. That's the most important thing. Once it's written, that's the thing. Sit down, write your book. Anyone can write a book. This is a book. I've got a book here. Hang on. A very famous book here called The Young Visitors that people still read. That was written by a little girl. That was written by a little girl called Daisy Ashford. I think she was 10 when she wrote it. And it's a brilliant, brilliant book. Very funny. So don't be shy about writing it and sending it in. And maybe you could send me bits of it on my Instagram. On my Instagram, I do creative writing lessons, and I like to read people's work out on a Friday. So maybe you could send something in to me, and maybe I could read it out on Friday, or get someone else to read it out. Kate and Evie, is broccoli my favourite food? Oh, damn! I forgot to bring it up. Yes, I love broccoli. I absolutely love broccoli, and I'm growing broccoli in my garden, and I normally keep it in the office till it's ready to go out, and it went out a couple of days ago. But I grow my plants on the windowsill over here. I don't know if you can see that. You probably can't see. This is my office, by the way. What a mess. Got all the important things in that a writer needs. For instance, a writer has to have a sword. I've got my sword. So all the important things are in here. Evan and Becky, if you weren't a writer, what would you be? I think I would be a knight of the round table if I wasn't a writer. Or, failing that, an astronaut. I'd like to be an astronaut. I'll show you something else. Oh, it's gone. Well, it's disappeared. But somewhere I have a piece of moon rock that was given to me by some astronauts. Isaac, I love your new book, and Issy loves Cosmic. What's your favourite book that I have written? What's my favourite book that I've written? I love all of my books because you take a long time to write a book, so the book has memories of when you wrote it. But I really, really like Runaway Robot because I love Eric and I love robots, and I also think it's very funny. Have I missed any questions? Have I got any more questions? We're coming up to time. I was wondering if to finish off I should read you a little tiny bit. Sabrina Johnson, I was always curious to know why you wrote for Doctor Who. Why? Why did I write for Doctor Who? Are you kidding me? Because I love Doctor Who and I've loved it since I was a little boy. And when they rang you up, they rang me up and said, would you like to write an episode of Doctor Who? And I said, if I write an episode of Doctor Who, will I get to go on the TARDIS? And they said, yes. And I said, yes, then I'd like to write an episode of Doctor Who. And they said, every single person we ask asks that question. And when we say yes, they always say yes. Because I wanted to go on the TARDIS. Oh gosh, it was so wonderful. It was such a great day. Samantha said, how do you write about a non-human? Samantha, that is a really intelligent question. And it's really made me think. And I think what we do quite a lot of the time in our life when we have to interact with something that's not human is that we kind of imagine that it is. So if you take your dog for a walk, don't you talk to it as though it was your little brother or your little sister or a sibling, as though it could understand the words that you were saying? And even though it can't really understand the words that you're saying, it does understand something. So you kind of create this bond between you out of words, but the real words don't matter. And I think that's what happens with robots. I think we talk to robots as though they're people. And because we're doing that, we start to understand them and they start to understand us, even if they don't quite understand us. I thought I'd finish. I mean, we're over time, so I thought, but I started late, didn't I? So I thought I'd finish by reading you a little bit about when Alfie gets Eric home. So Alfie's found this huge robot in lost property. He's got him home and he cannot wait to find out what Eric can do. And he says, you know when you get a new phone or something and you just want to rip the box open right there? Oh, hang on, Carrie's birthday. Do you think adults should read more children's books to escape into story, particularly in these stressful times? Carrie, I don't know how old you are on this birthday, but you are, even if you're 100 years old, you're wise beyond your years, because absolutely, yes, you should read children's books in stressful times, because children's books are full of wisdom and they're full of good heart, and people write children's books full of love. And that's what we need at this time, I think. And also this nostalgia and the fact that your parents might have read them when you were a child and so on. Absolutely, absolutely. This is the time to read your children's books. Look what I've been reading. I've been reading this by the wonderful Joan Aiken. This is called The Kingdom Under the Sea. Can you see what a mess this book is? Because I've had this book since I was a little boy. Can you see that's my signature from when I was a little boy? And it's got these amazing pictures in. Can you see? This is called The Kingdom Under the Sea and it's by Joan Aiken. And when I was little, I thought it was a magic book. And then when I was a bit older, I thought, obviously, that was silly. It's obviously not a magic book. And now I've found it again. I discover it is a magic book because it transports me back in time to when I first read it and how happy I was tucked up in bed. And now I'm going to read you a bit of Eric, because the most wonderful thing in the world is if one of my books became that little time machine for one of you. So Alfie has just got Eric home. You know when you get a new phone or something and you want to rip the box open right there and then, and you're so excited you don't even read the instructions? That's what it was like when I got the Hello Gayton Primary. When I got Eric home, I just couldn't wait to see what he could do. Okay, Eric, I said, unleash your powers. There was a long pause, a whir of cogs. A mechanical brain was thinking. I'm sorry, I don't understand that request. Just show me what you can do, I said. I can perform a range of household chores. For instance, I can sweep the floor or iron the clothes. Iron the clothes? I thought I'd found Iron Man, not Ironing Man, because I thought I found the kind of robot that looked as though he could shoot lasers from its eyes or bullets from his fingers or transform itself into a rocket. Ironing? Ironing is a disappointment. I can welcome guests. We don't have any guests. I can answer the telephone. Nobody answers the telephone anymore. I can prepare a light snack. If you've been expecting lasers from the eyes or bullets from the fingers, a light snack is definitely a disappointment. But it is also a snack. I can prepare cucumber sandwiches. Cucumber sandwiches are not a snack. Cucumber sandwiches are a way of concealing cucumber. I can cook eggs. Eggs could be good, I thought. So I gave him a couple of eggs. Eric's approach to cooking eggs was not the same as your approach to cooking eggs. He opened his hand, put the eggs on the palm of his hand, then closed his fingers and crushed those eggs into his steel palm. Then he opened his fingers again, and his hand was glowing red hot. He was literally grilling the eggs on his own hand. They sizzled, they bubbled. Bits of broken eggshell inside glowed white with heat. The heat from Eric's hand blasted my face. I had to screw up my eyes, which was just as well because soon little bits of broken eggshell were flying around the room like tiny hot bullets. I will cook for 3 minutes, said Eric. No, stop! You're going to burn the place down. We're being shelled by eggs. Eric nodded. Then he turned his hand around so the palm was pointing down. Incinerated egg flopped onto the floor, bubbling and black like a deep-fried bat. It was not food, but it was excellent. I said, do it again, and gave him 2 more eggs. One of those eggs filled up with air and then exploded like a little egg hand grenade. They were the last 2 eggs, so I thought I'd try them with toast. Slices of bread caught fire within seconds, and the wrapper of the loaf swelled up and then caught fire and floated around the room like a little tiny lost dragon. I tried it with raisins. They squealed, then they hissed, then they fossilized. I tried it with cheese. It went gooey and then flowed like lava through his fingers onto the floor. I tried it with sugar. Sugar smelt like all the sweets you've ever wanted, but then it turned into a horrible black evil superglue. I tried it with salt, which blazes blue. And I tried it with plastic. Don't do that. It smells like poo. Very thinly sliced potato I thought might lead to crisps, and it did. I sprinkled them with salt and doused them with vinegar, but when I tried to eat some, Eric put up his hand to stop me. Then he poured the crisps into one of the best bowls and handed it to me on a tray. I thought he really is a very polite robot. And as I sat there munching my way through a massive bowl of salt and vinegar, I thought, okay, I don't have a laser-blasting warbot robot, but I do seem to have found a massive crisp-making machine. Thank you so much. This has been so fun. I've never done this before. I'm sorry there were little glitches at the beginning. I hope I answered all your questions. I haven't, because Annie from Gayton Primary has ever asked me if I'd ever written a book where the main character is an animal, and I have a great answer to that question. Yes, I wrote a book called Sputnik's Guide to Life on Earth, in which a space dog is the main character, and the space dog's name is Sputnik, and he's not really a dog, he's an alien, but he's decided to come to Earth disguised as a dog because he met a dog in space. The first creature to leave this planet was a dog. It was a dog called Laika. And Sputnik met Laika and asked her about life on Earth, and she said, if you go to Earth, go as a dog, because the dominant species on Earth is dogs. There are other species on Earth called humans, but they're only there to bring you food and water, to brush your fur, to throw you things to fetch, and if you do a poo, they clear it up after you. So you should definitely go. Okay. Frank, thanks for your talk. It's been a delight. What a lovely way to have with the children. Thank you so much from an older child. I'm going to say goodbye. Thank you for those lovely messages. I've had a wonderful, wonderful time here. Let's do it again sometime. And in the meantime, I will sign off with the Pearl and Dean tune. Okay, thank you very much. And it's... Okay, goodbye. Hold that smile. End live video. There you go. We're ending.